Welcome, dear souls. I'm your Mr. Dark. Let's dive into the realm of shadows.
It all started after we saw the comedy film called Tag in 2018. For those of you who are unaware, it's based on a real story about a group of friends who played in an endless version of the children's game. I think I enjoyed the film at the time, but I can't remember now. After years of this gradually worsening hell, I shudder every time I remember the concept that inspired my husband, Elliot. "Let's do it," he said. "Sorry," I replied, smirking. "Right here." "No," he laughed, rolling his eyes. "Not that. Tag, a never-ending game of tag. We live in the same house, so I mean it probably wouldn't be as thrilling as the film," I said. "We just end up sitting on the sofa, constantly tagging each other in a back and forth slapping match." Elliot pondered on my point, tapping his lips thoughtfully. He was always a passionate person. Once he became hyper-fixated on something, it was hard to deter, and I loved watching his face scrunch up as the cognitive cogs wore away. But this time, my amusement at his fixation would be short-lived. "Okay," Elliot eventually said. As we hopped into the car, we could make the game interesting. Only one person can be tagged per day. The game pauses until midnight, at which point whoever's it can tag the other. I laughed. "Midnight? Well, I think we both know that the tagging is going to happen when we're both in bed, don't we?" My husband smiled. It wasn't an unpleasant smile to my eyes, but everything seems different in retrospect. "Who's saying it'd still be lying next to you?" he said. Even then, when I still thought his suggestion to be light-hearted, the way he said that set my hairs on end. "No, we're not gonna be an old married couple with separate beds. Why don't we make the starting point 6 p.m.? I asked. "Okay. Wanna begin?" "Sure," I said. "Who's it first?" "You," Elliot replied. "He'll be a gentleman. And tag. You're it." I squealed, laughing as I tapped his shoulder playfully. Elliot smiled, keeping his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "And it's 8 p.m. I guess I'll have to wait until tomorrow to get you back. You're going to be so easy to catch." And the next day, he proved that. At 6 p.m., on the dot, my husband silently emerged from a hiding spot behind the sofa and tagged me. I yelped, clutching my pounding chest. "I didn't even hear you come home." "I didn't go to the office today." Elliot giggled. "I'd been hiding there for hours." When I arrived home the next day, I waited for my husband to walk through the door so I could have my revenge. 6 p.m. came and went. At 7 p.m., I texted Elliot to ask when he'd be home. He responded that he was sleeping at the office to avoid being tagged. And when he didn't show up the day after, I told him that tag might cost us our relationship if I were never to see him again. His response infuriated me. "Nice try. Ultimatums won't work. I don't want to be it." When I told him that he'd better come home, his response sparked a ripple of shivers across my body. "Oh, but I am home, darling. You just haven't seen me yet." Then I heard the slightest creak from the cupboard beneath the sink. When I opened the double doors, there was my husband. And ordinarily, that would have been a funny sight, wouldn't it? Just a game of tag that had reached dizzying heights of ridiculousness. But you didn't see his face. That was Elliot, not my Elliot. Bulging, unblinking, bloodshot eyes, unhinged smile, frothing at the lips. That giggle. Ever since he suggested we play tag, the man I knew was gone. Throughout lockdown, given that we were living in such close quarters, the game did become slightly easier, but Elliot lost a piece of himself with every passing day. I tried to get him to hyper-fixate on something else. No use. Still, whenever one of us had been tagged and the game paused, my husband returned to his normal self. That was when I decided I was going to stop playing. It was the only way to get him back. So Elliot tagged me, and I didn't return the tag on the following day. For months, things returned to normal. But then, one day, at a local restaurant, he brought up the topic again. Lisa, Elliot started. What? I asked. I'm right in front of you. He said. Why won't you tag me? I sighed. You were making me uncomfortable. Elliot, you weren't yourself when you were it. A fleeting glint in his eye sent a weighty lump of fear cascading to the pit of my stomach. It was a glimmer of cruelty that had been burgeoning beneath the surface of his cold, unfeeling eyes for 3 years. The look that it hoped would go away if I would stop playing his haunted game. The true horror had yet to begin. This won't do at all. Lisa, he whispered in a voice hardly his own. I've been patient. I thought you were planning the ultimate move. I'm going to have to make a new rule. When someone is it, they must make an effort to tag the other player. Otherwise, the other player becomes it. I scoffed. Look, you'd happily play the game if you could be normal about it. Elliot smiled. Of course. I won't take it too seriously. It's fun. Lisa, that's why I want to play. This was a little over a year ago, and it was anything but fun after that. I couldn't decide whether I feared hunting Elliot or being hunted by him. On one hand, the thought of Elliot lurking around any corner in my home filled me with an unyielding sense of horror. On the other hand, wherever he was chasing me, I felt genuine terror at what would happen when he tagged me. And one day, my fear was justified. Elliot, I screamed. I was lying on the floor, shivering after my husband had tagged me. But tag doesn't begin to cover it. Elliot thumped me in the arm with a cricket bat. Thumped it so hard that I couldn't move, that I would later find out that it was broken. New rule, Elliot said, cracking his neck in a horrid, inhuman way. Every tag is more creative than the last. Shaking uncontrollably, I finally snapped. You've given the man so many chances, but physical abuse, that was the line. HED crossed it, and there was no coming back from that. It was finally time to abandon the marriage. You hit me. It's over, I said, in moving out. You're not the man I married. He never would have hurt me. Elliot froze, and something inexplicably horrifying happened. His eyes blackened. The newly darkened pupils merged with the whites of his eyes. Do you think the game ends if we end? Elliot asked, sinister lies snickering. You're still it. But if you don't make an effort, what's happened to you? Elliot. I wailed, clutching my broken arm and sliding away from the unhinged figure who loomed above me. We're not playing tag anymore. Okay. New rule, he said. When I next tag you, the game's over. No, you can't tag me ever again. In it, I whispered. I remember the rule. You only stay it if you make an effort, Elliot gleefully said, striding towards me. Are you going to make an effort? I ran out of the house. Left Tom hanging limply by my side. I used my right hand to scoop my phone out of my pocket, and I called my sister from the side of a busy road. She urged me to call the police, but Elliot had fled when officers reached the house. I couldn't stop thinking about the blackness that spread across his eyes. So I ended up on an online forum talking about blackened eyes and changed personalities. One user's comment sent chills through my body. HES got the black book. He'll only stop playing when one of you dies. Terrified beyond words, I decided that it wasn't safe for me to live with my sister. If the anonymous commenter were correct, then Elliot's talk about the game being over would surely have spelled my end. I moved to a lakeside cabin under a different name, intending to stay far away from Elliot until I could figure out the next course of action. I woke at on one particularly wintry morning in December. The sound of giggling filled the lakeside cabin, and I trembled. Walking to the edge of the upper balcony, I looked below to see a horrifying sight in the middle of the living room. a head peering over the back of the sofa. "Picchio!" Elliot chortled. I screamed and hauled my half-frozen body towards the stairs, barreling towards the front door. But as my hand clutched the handle, something clutched me. I turned to see Elliot on the floor, propped up by hands and legs in a low, crouching position. The fingers on one of his hands were curled viciously around my ankle. And he was grinning. That awful grin. "Tag," he whispered. "Game over." His mouth opened, revealing numerous rows of unnaturally jagged, janky teeth, poised to pounce. With a vehement look in his eyes, Elliot chuckled again. I screeched, swinging my foot squarely at his jaw. As the demonic man recoiled, I fled from the lakeside house and drove far away. That was months ago. I know Elliot's still out there. The game's not over. Like the online firm user said, hell only stop playing when one of you dies.
Thanks for listening. If you like this story and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more Reddit horror stories for you to listen to. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Have a sweet dream. Bye.